And my ending is despair, unless I be relieved by prayer, which pierces so that it assaults mercy itself and frees all faults. As you from crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free. That's right, all you theater kids. Tonight we are talking about William Shakespeare. How about it, Ash? You excited? Where the hell are you? Oh, you're on vacation. Oh, okay. Well, you just have fun and like don't keep me from you having fun. Oh, okay, yeah, no, just you can interject. Don't, yeah, have fun with it. So before I get into all this and talk about, the guy, be sure to like, share, subscribe, check me out. If you like this video, make sure you ring the bell and there's a few more videos on the channel that might tickle your fancy. Well, that's gross. Okay, no, I'm not gonna say that. Do I need to get into the details of Big Billy Shake It? The man probably contributed to popular culture more than anyone else in the history of popular culture. Even Jerry Bruckheimer, who's getting close. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, there are 410 adaptations, either film or television, of his plays. And as of 2020, IMDb has William Shakespeare listed as story by over 1,000 projects, the earliest of which being an adaptation of his play King John in 1899. Talk about royalty checks, am I right? Needless to say, whether we were forced to read Romeo and Juliet in high school, we watched The Lion King on VHS or DVD growing up, or we were big old Tucci stands and we couldn't get enough of his performance as Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream, so much so that we edited out all of his scenes and made a supercut and watched that over and over for 3 days straight. We, as damn near a planet, have at least a baseline familiarity with the works of William Shakespeare. In the long, long ago of the 1990s, there was this strange phenomenon happening in Hollywood filmmaking. Studios were releasing films that were based on works of classical literature, but aimed at a teenage audience. No, this is not Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet. He's Australian, so it's Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet. Because essentially that film was just taking the play and then modernizing and aestheticizing the setting to his very specific vision. Something that he would do once again when he teamed up with Leonardo DiCaprio and made his version of The Great Gatsby. No, this required more creativity from the screenwriters, where they took dusty old stories that were centuries old and revamped them for a modern audience. This subgenre, which doesn't really have a name but is clearly its own thing, was first brought to the public with 1995's Clueless, directed by Amy Heckerling, who also directed Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Look Who's Talking, and Vamps. The film stars my forever Batgirl Alicia Silverstone as Cher, Stacey Dash, before she became Stacey Dash, as Dion, and Brittany Murphy, R.I.P., as Ty, as well as ever-youthful America's sweetheart Paul Rudd as Cher's stepbrother, former stepbrother. It's a whole complicated mess. Heckerling adapted Clueless from Jane Austen's 1815 novel Emma, and the decision to craft a story from that novel seems to have happened rather organically for Heckerling, as she had been working on a parody film about the it crowd of Beverly Hills, and after revisiting Emma, she realized she was writing a character very similar to Emma, someone with this nothing can go wrong attitude. So when she realized her work was very parallel to Emma, she made it more deliberate and tried to make these 1800s type things, see how they could represent what was happening in the 90s in Beverly Hills. And because of this fantastic aligning of the creative stars, we got some fantastic makeover montages comparing the plight of Haitians, or as Cher says, Acadians, with people who did not properly RSVP to a garden party she was hosting, and of course, As If. Clueless made $56 million on a $12 million budget. So, what followed was a deluge of films that were about teenagers based off of classical works of literature. 1999's She's All That was based off of George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion. 1999's Cruel Intentions was based off of Dangerous Liaisons, or the French version of that, Les Liaisons Dangereuses. You can't tell me that was wrong. I'm only talking to a camera. 2000's Whatever It Takes was based off of Cyrano de Bergerac, and 2010's Easy A was based off of Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. These are just prime examples of how quick Hollywood can jump onto a bandwagon and oversaturate a market. It wasn't long before The Bard was brought into the mix with the help of two very creative screenwriters who were to take this subgenre and produce not just one, but two of its most defining films. And no, I'm not talking about the 2001 adaptation O, which was based off of Othello, set in a high school, directed by Tim Blake Nelson, because it does not fit into our idea of this subgenre. Firstly, the tone is all wrong, as most of these films are light-hearted, despite the ending of Cruel Intentions. And secondly, most of these are also subgenres of romantic comedies. And as Othello is one of the more intense tragedies of Shakespeare, it is less of a romantic comedy than it is a psychological thriller. I'm sorry, McKay Pfeiffer and Josh Hartnett fans, you will have to click elsewhere for your fantastic breakdown of that movie. In 1999, the film 10 Things I Hate About You was released. And from the opening scene, it makes its mark as to say what it is and what it is not. The first shot is a bunch of glamour shots of Seattle over a pop song. And eventually the camera cuts to a car that's got basically the it crowd in it, full of who you would think of as stand-ins for the film Clueless. But then the camera pans over to the next car, showing it is Julia Stiles, Katarina Stratford, and the music changes to Joan Jett's Bad Reputation. So the film is essentially saying, this is not your mother's adaptation of classical literary works. This is an adaptation of classical literary works that rocks. And before I get any further, the cast is just fantastic. As I said earlier, Julia Stiles is Katarina Stratford, but it also has Heath Ledger portraying Patrick Verona, the bad boy who gets bet to date Kat. Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Cameron James, the new kid who pines for Bianca. Larissa Oleynik as Bianca, Kat's younger sister, who has a contentious relationship with her. Larry Miller as Walter Stratford, Katarina and Bianca's overbearing OBGYN father, with strict rules on dating. David Krumholtz as Michael, who essentially is playing the part of the Shakespearean fool. Gabriel Union as Chastity, one of Bianca's friends who has some fantastic lines.
I know you can be overwhelmed, and you can be underwhelmed, but can you ever just be whelmed?
And last but not least, Allison Janney as Miss Perky, the school guidance counselor who aspires to be an author of erotic fiction. The film was directed by Gil Younger and was written by Karen McCullah and Kirsten Smith. Younger really hasn't done anything other than the Martin Lawrence Black Knight film and a bunch of TV movies, so let's forget about him. But the writers, McCullah and Smith, have been writing partners since the 90s, and this film was the first script of theirs that got sold. 10 Things I Hate About You was an adaptation of the Shakespeare play The Taming of the Shrew, a very funny comedy where the titular shrew, Katharina Minola, who doesn't fit into society standards of what would make a good wife, is married off to Petruchio and is tamed by, you're gonna love this, it's so funny, being sleep deprived and starved, getting gaslit into being told the sun is the moon and an old man is a beautiful young woman. And this is the best part. Her independent spirit is broken down so much by the end of the play that the climax is her berating the wives of all the other men to obey their husbands because that is good. Ha ha ha. So funny. Everyone laugh. But in 10 Things I Hate About You, McCullah and Smith not only adapt the setting and the story to modern times, it also adapts the idea of taming to a modern audience. Yes, the analogous character to Katerina, is willful, fiercely independent, and has a mind of her own, much like in the play.
I guess in this society, being male and an asshole makes you worthy of our time.
But the writers, rather than being this old, decrepit white guy who thinks that women are broodmares and these characteristics are antithetical to what makes a good woman, they make these characteristics, while somewhat problematic when dialed up to 11, making her standoffish at the beginning, they're pretty aspirational, to the point where one could argue that the suitor, Patrick, is tamed by the Shrew, as he quits smoking, appreciates her musical tastes, and genuinely changes his entire worldview as to care about somebody. And I guess you could say that Kat is tamed in a sense, because she goes from aggressively not wanting any male companionship to being okay with male companionship. But it's not so drastic as it will overtake her entire life and identity. She wants to go to college, Sarah Lawrence in particular, and she has plans for her future beyond high school that probably don't have anything to do with Patrick, and she seems okay with that. She just learns throughout the film that it is okay to fall in love, and it is okay for her to do it on her own terms. Now, the plot of this film, it's kind of fucked up, but what wouldn't be, that was based off of a work that was famous in the 1600s. Taking the basic conceit from the play, Walter Stratford, he has a rule against dating in his house, and Bianca, his youngest daughter, is very upset about this. But seeing Kat's joyous, who gives a shit attitude about the rule, he changes it. He says that Bianca can go ahead and date whoever she wants.
When she does.
Bianca only has eyes for Joey, played by Andrew Keegan, and he is an aspiring model. But it's Cameron, the new kid in town, who makes a plan. Get Joey, who already likes Bianca, to pay someone to date Kat so that he can date Bianca. All the while Cameron will be trying to cozy up with Bianca behind the scenes, and then he can be the one who's dating Bianca rather than Joey. So he gets him to date her so that he can ostensibly date her, but really he is behind everything and wants to date her behind his back. It's all a bit complicated. Hilarity ensues. Look, this was the 90s, and having guys make girls to be trophies of their victory is kind of a thing. So, this film might not be the wokest film of all time, but, hey, it was the 90s. What 10 Things I Hate About You has going for it, apart from the A-plot love story between Katerina and Patrick, is the genuine humor that it has and the strength of its side characters. The way that David Krumholtz's character is fully realized into a Shakespearean fool archetype in a modern high school setting is such a brilliant use of his character. Shakespeare did love to use his fools in a lot of his plays, and the character is typically a commoner or a peasant who uses his wits to outdo those who are of higher standing. Think of the fool from King Lear, the always drunk Trinculo from The Tempest, or Tooch's Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream. In 10 Things I Hate About You, Krumholtz's Michael is an AV club nerd who, despite being a social pariah, or quite possibly because of it, has an intricate knowledge of the way the school's social structure works. This is used for comic effect as he gives a tour to Cameron and explains the inner workings of the caste system with very timely examples of the social hierarchy showing up.
Watch. Hey there. Eat me. You see that?
However, once he gets on board with Cameron's plan, he becomes the man behind the curtain, convincing Joey to pay Patrick to date Kat, all the while getting a penis drawn on his face. He is taking this humiliation and dejection from the unsuspecting Joey, and using the character's arrogant bravado against him, giving Joey the sense of power to their transaction. This is good stuff when it comes to an adaptation, taking the essence of the Shakespearean fool and bringing it to this adaptation of The Taming of the Shrew. I don't know if there was a fool in The Taming of the Shrew because it's already laugh out loud funny, alright? Women. But the other side characters get their chance to shine in the film as well. Larry Miller's Walter is the neurotic tyrant of the family. His heart is in the right place, but he definitely could take a chill pill. Allison Janie's Miss Perky, in only a few key scenes, steals the entire film. What with her constant need of a thesaurus as to best describe the nature of a male's.
Quivering member. I like that.
And Mr. Morgan, played by Daryl Mitchell, is another one of these scene stealers. As not only is he the English teacher who gives Kat the assignment that becomes the title of the film, but also he has some fantastic outbursts of pure honesty.
Someday you're gonna get bitch slapped, and I'm not gonna do a thing to stop it.
All in all, 10 Things I Hate About You might be the high watermark for reinterpretations of works of classical literature. It not only improves upon the source material, something every adaptation should do, especially to a work that's as old as Shakespeare, but it adheres to Shakespeare in spirit. Not being insulting to the relic, but finding interesting ways to connect today's world with the 16th century world of his time. And the fact that Shakespeare's love stories are, how we say,
Here's to my love.
very high stakes
Aptly some poison doth yet hang on him.
and high emotions.
Bang!
Setting a Shakespearean love story in high school, the time in everyone's life where hormones are raging and every day is life or death, socially speaking, it fits. After 10 Things I Hate About You, McCullah and Smith went on to write Legally Blonde in 2001 and Ella Enchanted in 2004. But then they went back to the well of Shakespeare to write the 2006 film She's the Man, an adaptation of Twelfth Night. Directed by Andy Finkman, yet another director who's done nothing of note since the film in question, She's the Man stars Amanda Bynes as Viola Hastings, James Kirk as her twin brother Sebastian, Channing Tatum as Duke Orsino, Laura Ramsey as Olivia, David Cross as Tobias Funke, Principal Horatio Gold. Seriously, this guy found his niche and stuck to it. I was half expecting him to show up in the third act covered in blue paint. Julie Haggerty and John Piper Ferguson as Viola and Sebastian's divorced parents, and Vinnie Jones as soccer coach. Shakespeare's Twelfth Night is a comedy of errors, where a young woman named Viola enters the service of Duke Orsino, pretending to be a man after being shipwrecked and separated from her twin brother Sebastian. In the service to Duke Orsino, Viola starts to fall in love with him, all the while he has eyes for Olivia, and Olivia is in love with Viola, who's pretending to be a man. This all comes to a head in the climax of the play, having Sebastian survived and, mistaken for his sister by Olivia, married, and Duke Orsino gets the no homo prize of Viola after she reveals to be herself a pretty woman instead of a man. And She's the Man doesn't go so far as changing the bones of the story like they did in 10 Things I Hate About You, rather just taking the story structure and transposing it to a high school setting, surrounded by soccer games, love triangle, and comedy of errors and all. It's so much so that the names of the characters in the film are just the names of the characters in the play. Viola is Viola. Duke Orsino is Duke Orsino. Olivia is... She's the Man, however, brings in themes of what modern society believes in what a boy and a girl should do. A major subplot of the film is Viola not wanting to do the debutante's ball that her mom wants to do in favor of playing soccer, which her mother finds a very boyish thing to do. The film also brings in the themes of you can't paint people with such a broad brush. Like, not all boys are this and not all girls are this. That's another very strong theme of the film. Duke Orsino is originally seen as this typical jock type, you know? The hot bod, the obsession with soccer, the pushing 30 while still in high school. But as the film unfolds, he is shown to have a sensitive heart. He fears to talk to girls because he doesn't know what to say and gets all nervous like.
I don't know, I just always say the wrong thing.
Oh, Channing, you've never felt nervous a day in your life. And he rebukes Viola as Sebastian when she constantly pretending to be this macho boy. She keeps on talking about girls as if they're sexual conquests. The film is all about being who you are, which is a pretty solid theme to lock onto in a story about somebody pretending to be somebody else. Look, Duke still has his no homo moment.
What are you talking about? I didn't kiss you.
When the boy he's kind of attracted to reveals herself to be a pretty girl. But hey, this was the mid-2000s, and literacy on gender dynamics wasn't as much of a thing as it is in 2021. And Viola's goals of the film to prove that she is just as good as the boys of her school after her soccer team gets cut by joining the rivals team in order to beat them, pretending to be a boy, that definitely hits on the what boys can do and what girls can do themes of the film. The comedy of She's the Man rests primarily on Amanda Bynes' performance, and I really don't want to get into the past decade or so of Amanda Bynes because it's really sad and I hope that she's doing well. But in She's the Man, she definitely takes charge of the film with her physical comedy. One thing to note about her work in All That, The Amanda Bynes Show, and her previous films, she is fantastic at bringing in over-the-top performances and using her body as a prop to get laughs. And She's the Man showcases her talents 100%. Whether it's a montage of her figuring out how to walk like a man, giving weird facial expressions when she gets caught, her wrestling with a file cabinet that she is inadvertently stuck to, or her delayed reaction of what she feels like a boy should feel like when a soccer ball hits in between her legs. And she and Tatum, neither of them were very skilled at soccer, so they spent hours every day learning how to play to make sure it looked believable on camera. You wouldn't think that there was that much work to be done in a silly comedy like this. And to cap off her physical performance, there is the fight scene in the bathroom with the debutantes that, while there were stunt performers used in this scene, there's a lot of shots that have the close-ups of the girls' faces, so she actually had to play fight with these characters and make it believable. The things I love about this film are Vinnie Jones as the soccer coach, or, the football coach as he would say it. He's fantastic, providing this overly brash, high masculinity performance to a character that has more layers than meets the eye. When he says,
You and Illyria, we don't discriminate based on gender.
It's just great. And I love the climax of the film, the soccer game, where we get the fun line,
Is it just me or does this soccer game have more nudity than most?
It's just fantastic. And this is the clear point in the story that everything was leading to. The big soccer game, Sebastian returning, the professing of love, and the big reveal of the deception. And I would also like to say that despite Channing Tatum was incredibly miscast as a 26-year-old pretending to be a 17-year-old high school student, we have Amanda Bynes to thank for his burgeoning career. He had not been in very many films before this one, and she saw him in a Mountain Dew commercial and was like, hey, that guy's a star. So she fought to keep him in the movie. I guess we all need to thank Amanda Bynes for Magic Mike, 21 Jump Street, and Foxcatcher. Now, there are many, many issues with this film, and people who have arguments against it, they probably are valid, but I'm not going to get into any of those. No, I'm going to get into a very personal, very specific issue with this film. My key objection with the entire film. Sebastian goes to a boarding school for high school, so Viola has to pretend to be a boy in this boarding school, which is fine. She can't escape. She has to be a boy for the whole time. This works. But As someone who spent 4 years of high school at a boarding school, the boys in this film are much too insecure with their own sexuality to be living with a bunch of boys in a dorm. There's this joke in the film, it's a throwaway joke, where Viola's phone rings and Aqua's Barbie girl plays. It's played off as, who's that boy who's listening to that weird girl music, you know? But in my experience, in a boarding school, in a military boarding school, mind you, that wasn't a thing. Like, we listened to Every Time We Touch by Cascada in my football locker room. We sang every word of that song. We played techno music in the shower together with some blacklights sometimes. And we were as likely as to wrestle with each other in such a violent manner that we were at risk of destroying property as we were to slap each other's butts and call our best friends babe. What, slapping each other's butts? Kind of a good hustle type thing. I don't know what you're talking about. You must be hearing things. But yes, if you were going to want to accurately portray a boarding school, specifically a male boarding school dorm, there would be much more nudity in the film. But that wouldn't do well for the tyrants at the MPAA, so I guess I can let that slide. Ultimately, She's the Man lacks the staying power that 10 Things I Hate About You has. Maybe it's the fact that this was 2006, and the modern reinterpretation of literary classics subgenre was already getting tired at that point. Which makes sense, as the 3 relatively high-profile examples after She's the Man are Easy A, The Duff, and Sierra Burgess is a Loser. 10 Things I Hate About You defined what this genre could be. And She's the Man showed that even in its waning days, there was still some fun up this subgenre's sleeve. But what these films both do well is modernizing 2 of Shakespeare's more notable plays to a contemporary audience. And the key question is, what would William Shakespeare think of these movies? Well, before having a complete breakdown showing him the history of the rise and the fall of the British Empire, seeing as after he died, there was the Golden Age, where the sun never set on the British Empire, and now all it has is the British Isles, only part of the British Isles, and the Falkland Islands. I think he would like the movies, but he'd be wondering why all the roles were not played by men. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I said that earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it again until you listen, until you watch and share and subscribe so I can take over this YouTube sphere. I must control all of the YouTube sphere. We shall take over.